Welcome, everybody, to the episode number 15 of Raphael and Alex's live stream weekly talks about important stuff in life. And as you can see, we are using a slightly different interface because today we are talking about comfort and discomfort. And I decided to slightly crawl out of my comfort zone and try a different platform to enhance my skills for the future. So it may not look as sleek as it could, but we are learning. So that's my excuse for this background, but there's no excuse for the topic. The topic is really important. We talked about it last time with Raphael at the end. And what we should cover is what is actually comfort for each of us, and where the growth of you or me as a person or a professional can happen. Is it always in the discomfort zone? Is it possible to find a balance between comfort and discomfort? How to go about it? What did we try in the past? What are we intending to try in the future? And I believe you will learn some tricks. And of course, you can ask questions as usual through the comments. We're gonna keep an eye on the chat and answer them as we go. I'll shut up for now and hand it over to Raphael. Raphael, how are you doing today? And what would you like to add about the topic we're about to cover?
Yeah, I think this is a very important one to be touching on right now. And I think that's always true. I'm constantly looking for ways to lean into discomfort in my own life and how that may serve me, not just for the sake of being uncomfortable, although I think that in and of itself can be a practice, right? Becoming better at leaning into discomfort can serve us in all different aspects of our life, whether it's in our relationship or our professional life or, physical body or personal development. I've heard it said that growth only happens outside of your comfort zone. And we can talk about whether that's true or not. I think that comfort zones range, and I think they're dynamic, and it looks very different for each of us. And looking forward to exploring this topic today. And if you're with us and you're watching this and there's a question that you have or something specific that you would like to hear discussed, please don't hesitate to comment. Or if you're watching this at a later time, feel free to comment or message, and we'll be happy to touch on it again in a future episode.
Absolutely. So let me kick it off. Actually, I've been, believe it or not, I've been thinking in between last week we spoke, Raphael, and today, and I'm kind of revisiting the space when I feel that. To move forward means invariably to leave the comfort, to be uncomfortable. But at the same time, I realize that sometimes I mistake the two. So being uncomfortable doesn't necessarily equal growth. It could be just a plain discomfort. It could be making oneself miserable, and I've been doing that in the past. I still do that quite often, and the way it manifests is I just I kind of judge myself for the stuff I didn't do in the past, the way I think I should have done. I'm making myself uncomfortable without reaping the benefits of growth. So how is it for you? What would you say? Is discomfort a necessary condition to growth? Of course, it's probably not enough to grow, but can we resolve this? Can we grow without going into discomfort, or are those two sides of the same coin?
Well, I hesitate to give a definitive answer because we're all unique and our circumstances are unique. But I think the short answer is no, it's not possible to achieve growth without some discomfort. If you stay in your comfort zone and stay with what you're familiar with, there's not a lot of growth happening in that kind of closed box way of thinking. And for some people, it may show up in a variety of ways in our life, right? Like it may be something we're avoiding. We may avoid something, or we may continue doing something in order to avoid discomfort. So an example would be, staying in a job or a career that you really don't like out of fear of the unknown, the chaos that would come, right? And there are different types of uncomfortable situations we may find ourselves in. There's the voluntary ones, right? Like going into a training session or deciding to write a chapter in a book or something like that. And there are involuntary ones. An example of that would be getting fired. Maybe you have no idea you're getting fired. Your boss calls you into your office, brief, conversation, and you're fired. Now you're thrown into chaos and uncertainty, not of your own accord. And so this is an example where training in discomfort voluntarily can be helpful, creating voluntary stress in our life. So yeah, I struggle to find an example of how one can grow without experiencing discomfort. And again, this is something, discomfort is something subjective. So it's kind of hard to really put your finger on it. It shows up differently for each of us. And we find so many ways to comfort ourselves, especially today. And some people do that with food, and some people do that with, electronic devices or bad relationships or whatever, insert habit or lifestyle choice there. And so, yeah, I think it would be good to discuss a little bit how that's been showing up in each of our lives. We've done a good deal of work with our former coach, Leo Babauta. We've worked a lot about discomfort, leaning into discomfort, and embracing uncertainty. So I think that we can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I was kind of hoping that we're gonna find a way to a recipe to some growth without discomfort, but it seems that's not gonna happen today because, however, I don't like the notion. I think I agree. I think some sense of stretch is important for the growth, or some sense of disruption. But I would still say we need to distinguish a few things in there. So the first facet of it I already mentioned. So there's the situation when we can be facing discomfort. I'm an expert in making myself uncomfortable with no obvious growth. Rather kind of sending myself on a downward spiral of having thoughts that don't lead to any productive action. But would you say that discomfort by itself for you is just necessary condition but not sufficient, or is it already a sufficient condition? I'm thinking now, and I don't have a clear answer. If we put ourselves into uncomfortable situation just for the sake of it, let's say these discomfort challenges we did, and I'm gonna get back to it. Having cold showers for a month or something. Does it by itself create condition that's sufficient enough to experience growth, in your opinion?
I think there needs to be some intention behind it, but if you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation on a regular basis, then I would argue that becoming good at being okay with discomfort is growth, right? If you're very adverse to discomfort and you're constantly trying to play it safe and you're constantly trying to stay cozy and you don't want to take that cold shower because it's cold and it's uncomfortable, there's not a lot of potential for growth in staying in that comfort zone. And I think you touched a little bit on distinguishing. You talked a little bit about creating discomfort for yourself in ways of thinking about something that should have gone a little bit differently. And I think that's a little bit different because that's not necessarily useful discomfort. And this is where we can kind of maybe weave in a little bit of mindfulness and awareness of an example of thinking without knowing that you're thinking. In other words, that moment when you can catch yourself in that thought and recognize that there isn't value in that, or maybe there is, but there is a distinction there, versus something like a cold shower, which doesn't feel very good necessarily in the beginning, but there are some reported health benefits to this, and again, just the practice of being okay with that discomfort.
I'm thinking, it's the discomfort. When you said there needs to be intention behind it, would you say that the experimental nature of it by itself would qualify as intention? For example, I want to see if I have what it takes. I just want to try if I can handle that. Does that qualify as intention for you or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
So basically, let's say for you, these let's say challenges that you went through, and I think we can circle back to that. Both myself and Raphael, we did experiment with voluntary deprivation. I did finish and kind of maintain to some extent the life with limited access to YouTube and processed sugar. Raphael went much farther with that. Would you say this would qualify as a challenge when you wanted to prove something to yourself, or did you have like a deeper intention already? You knew what benefits you're expecting.
I think a little bit of both. And I think this is a good place to draw a distinction, Alesh. When I want to clarify what I meant when I said there should be an intention behind it. And the example that you used of kind of ruminating or experiencing some sort of comfort, but not necessarily being aware of it, I don't think there's as much utility in that as there is in recognizing that we are putting ourselves in a challenging or uncomfortable situation for some sort of purpose of growth or betterment, advancement, or just getting good at being uncomfortable. Again, it really is like a muscle. So you've done the cold showers for a month thing, and I take cold showers almost daily. And so that initially, when you first get in, it can be a little bit uncomfortable. And if you can control your breathing and you can calm down relatively quickly, it can actually be very pleasant, especially if the weather's hot. But even if it's cold, a lot of what you're experiencing as discomfort is actually psychological, and it's not as bad as we make it out to be physically. Now, a different example would be unnecessary suffering. So if you're ruminating over a decision that you made, something that didn't go as you planned it, or something that, whatever, something you said, and you're not even aware that you are in this thought. In other words, you are completely going for a ride with this thought. You're playing it over in your head. Oh, I was so stupid to say this thing. What do these people think about me? Or, man, if I hadn't made that decision, this could be. If you're not aware that you're having that thought process, then I would consider that kind of unnecessary suffering and not productive. In fact, I think that's counterproductive, because it sends us it kind of perpetuates the self-limiting beliefs. It kind of keeps us stuck in this loop where there isn't really an opportunity to connect with possibility from that place, because we're stuck in what could have happened or what we should have said. And so I just wanted to make that distinction, because if we're not even aware that we are thinking of something in that way, then what utility does that have? Now, if we are aware and we catch this, then it can be actually used as a springboard, as an opportunity for growth, right? How can we learn from that experience? Oh, I behaved unskillfully in this meeting, or I said something that I really wish I hadn't said. And how can I learn from that and apply that in the future? I just wanted to make that distinction because, you mentioned the example of kind of, creating the discomfort of being with a feeling of something that we did or didn't do.
Yeah, I guess that's an important one. Like that, this ruminating, of course, is not something that is necessarily productive. Maybe before we move on, there's one more distinction I wanna tackle, and that's the question of objective discomfort. So I'm gonna start with my experience again. So I do admire, and I know I'm not the only one. I do admire people who are capable of extreme physical activity. This ultra Burning Man, double marathon, whatever it is.
I think you mean Iron Man, but Burning Man can be quite a challenge for some people too, I'm sure.
Okay, you see, I'm not into sports enough, but I admire those people from respectable distance. The thing is, a few years ago, actually, I spoke with a person who happened to be in my class in one of my trainings, and I use this example, like these extreme physical feats, and he said, "No, that's what I do. I love this. I love the discomfort. I love to do these things." And it made me thinking that discomfort or the voluntary discomfort always happens in some context. And for this guy, this was the context. This was the container within which he felt in control. Taking on these physical challenges was discomfort, but it wasn't such a great discomfort as it would have been for me, probably. However, as it turned out later on during the training, this person has much smaller capacity to endure discomfort in the area of human interactions, difficult conversations, stuff like that. And that led me to a question I have kind of answered for myself. Is there anything such as objective discomfort, objective difficulty or not? Mm-hmm. And spoiler alert, I would say it isn't. It's really individual. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a fantastic question, and I've read some books on endurance athletes and the most recent science behind it. And David Goggins comes to mind when you make this description of someone. And this is if you remember in the beginning of our conversation, I said that leaning into discomfort looks very different for different people. So for someone like David Goggins, doing an ultra marathon it's most likely uncomfortable. And he's even said that he actually hates this stuff, but he keeps pushing himself. So he says he hates this stuff. And certainly we know that running 100 miles, and your feet are breaking, it can't be physically comfortable, but it's in his zone of possibility. This is what he does. Now, for someone like that to lean into discomfort, I would say, go sit in a Vipassana retreat for 10 days. We know you can run 100 miles. Can you sit still for 10 days and without being able to do any push-ups or can you be with that energy, right? And some people have done 30 and 60-day Vipassana meditations, and for them training for a marathon might be like the ultimate. Now these are very extreme examples, right? They're much more realistic examples. And so objective discomfort, I guess, would be something like like somebody hitting your hand with a hammer. We can all agree that would be very uncomfortable for any one of us, right? And so this is an interesting question. I'm certainly not going to sit here and pretend like I know or understand all of it, but I'm fascinated by exploring this topic.
I guess we don't need to dwell on that too much, but if some of our viewers are interested, we did discuss in the previous episode the difference between growth and transformation, and we actually worked with the definition of the coach Adam Quine, that growth is something you're already reliable to do, just trying to do that faster, higher, farther, or something like that. So I guess if I'm reliable doing 10 push-ups, doing 11 push-ups may be uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's something that's within reach. It's the discomfort within the container or within the context I know. It doesn't really expose me to, transformational opportunity or experience. But dipping into a different territory might something I haven't tried yet, something I haven't accomplished in the past.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of the flip of that. Taking on another physical challenge, while very uncomfortable and new, and can be, I would still consider it in the realm of the possibility, because I've been reliable to do that for some years now, to be consistent with some sort of physical practice and often exploring new modalities. So I'm still figuring out where the next potential for transformation or for like a big breakthrough on that end is. And I think really it's just staying consistent and continuing to grow in that way. But the example I wanted to give was doing this live stream. So before this live stream and before the last mastermind that we were in, as you know, I was completely disconnected from social media by choice after, having gotten in the earlier years, and, kind of using it pretty regularly, like a lot of people have, and then stepping away for some time. So getting back in and then doing something like this was completely out of my comfort zone. And now I think we're 15 episodes in, and it feels pretty natural, but still I would consider it something that is pushing the boundaries of what I'm comfortable with. Whereas for you, Alesh, it might be, signing up for a Tough Mudder or something like that, which would be, for me, very uncomfortable and also pushing my.
Yeah, it's. I'm getting there. I'm actually. I'm not ready to commit fully, but I'm very close to that. I think due to the lack of physical activity I have, I will need to hire a trainer because that would create enough commitment and accountability partnership I need to start taking this part seriously again. And I'm putting it off because I'm thinking like, yeah, unless you can do it yourself, but doesn't seem so that way so far.
Well, there's no shame in hiring a trainer. In fact, I think it's a wonderful thing to do, especially if you have access. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Alesh say here he's going to be hiring a trainer and leaning into that discomfort. We can kind of segue into accountability here, and how we can commit to being a little bit more uncomfortable for the sake of growth or for the sake of expanding what's possible for ourselves, right? If we keep something to ourselves and nobody knows, it's kind of low risk, right? Like if I don't tell anybody, hey, I just started a new weight training regimen, and these are some of my goals, but my real goal is to just be consistent and not miss anything. And now I've got some accountability there, because people are going to ask like, oh, hey, how's it going with that thing that you said you were doing? And, then I'll have an opportunity. And if you keep it to yourself, who's going to know? You can just kind of drop it and never worry about it again, and no one will be the wiser. And that's very comfortable, right? There's no risk, there's no chaos, there's no uncertainty in that. It's very clean. Discomfort can be messy, right? Growth can be messy, and certainly transformation will be really messy, at least in some of the stages leading to it. And I hesitate to say leading to it, because I think that this is something that is dynamic. I don't think we reach a place and we are transformed and then that's the finished product and we just kind of live life from there. I think it's much more nuanced than that, and dynamic, and it's very easy to fall back into old patterns and old habits, which we've talked about at great length during these sessions together.
No, that's very true. Like the old patterns are always there, but for good reasons. I'd like to remind to myself and everyone actually that our brain is wired to do just that, to keep us safe, and to be comfortable is an extension of being safe. I mean, if you're warm, if you're fed, if you are feeling good physically, if there's no stress in the body, your brain perceives this as desirable state. So that's why mainly what we are trying to do is get out of discomfort as quickly as we can and evade it if possible.
And I would argue that today it's more difficult than ever, because we now are holding a device in our pocket, often in our hand, rarely more than a reach away from us. It's that easy. Oh, there it is, And when you see people kind of subconsciously unlocking their phone in public spaces, sometimes people have a legitimate reason to open their phone. They're replying to a message or they're doing something. But I think the data show that the vast majority of the time we're unlocking our phone, it's just an impulse. There's really no urgent thing that requires our attention. So what are we doing in that moment? We're avoiding some kind of discomfort. It's more acceptable these days to, if you're in an elevator with a group of strangers or whatever, to unlock your phone and scroll for 60 seconds, then, sit there silently or, even strike a conversation with the person next to you or just sit there and be and notice your breathing, right? Like you're the odd one if you're in the restaurant and your partner went to the restroom and you're sitting there and you don't unlock your phone. If you're just sitting there taking in the sights and breathing, you're like the strange one. Everyone else has their device. And I think that's a really good example of how addicted to being comfortable we have become, and how quickly we reach for that comfort. And for some people, it's digital media, and for other people, it's food, and probably sometimes both. And I just want to emphasize the importance of developing a little bit of mindfulness and awareness around this, because the issue is if you can't even recognize these behaviors, your chances of changing them are pretty slim. So there has to be a point where we make a choice that we see something in our life that's out of balance and we actually want to do something about it. So there has to be that desire, right? We're not just talking about just go get uncomfortable, and that's going to look different for anyone. So, I often invite people here to examine your life, take a look at the things in your life that are important to you, your relationships, your career, your health, and see what's out of balance. And how is comfort, how is your need to stay comfortable getting in the way of having more balance in those areas of your life? And I think that's what this conversation today is about, Alesh, is how can we use discomfort to help us create more balance and more well-being in our life, stronger relationships, more resilient bodies, more robust social networks, more abundant career paths, and so on. That's what this is really about to me.
Yeah, I like you mentioned the devices or smartphones in public place, because establishing a relationship, like a meaningful relationship with people, whether it's a future spouse or a friend or just a group of strangers to begin with, requires to go over the hurdle of discomfort, of not shielding your face with the phone, unless you're watching our stream, that's allowed. But actually seeking eye contact, facing a person and introducing yourself, which is something that is still necessary. And we are less resilient in this respect than we used to be 20 years ago, because it's so much easier to hide behind your device, and it's seemingly less acceptable to seek eye contact with a stranger. So that might be a minor discomfort exercise for almost anyone these days, I believe. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And the interesting thing is that often what we're looking for in that reaching for the device or opening the social media app is some sort of connection. We're after some sort of feeling of connection, of wholeness, of well-being, and we're looking outside of ourselves for that. And for a lot of people, this could be about relationships. And we'll go back to the public setting for a moment. Being able to get up and go talk to someone that you find interesting or attractive, someone who you're intrigued by, that you just want to go up and talk to. That would be an example of something that for many people would be very uncomfortable, right? Or striking up a conversation with a stranger, even online. So going outside of what we're reliable for. And so how can we develop a practice around this? And I think this is where it doesn't matter how you choose to be uncomfortable on a regular basis, but I think that this extends beyond what you're doing. So we'll go back to the cold shower example for a moment. If you become accustomed to taking a cold shower every day, regardless of whether you feel like it or not, you're training that muscle, that moment of choice where you say, this is going to suck. And you can push yourself through that anyway and totally ignore that. That's a very powerful thing to get control of, because that's the same thing that's going to show up for you when you see someone across the room and you think to yourself, man, I'd really like to talk to that person. They look really interesting, but they don't want to talk to me, or that'd be weird. That's that same kind of self-doubt voice that we can push aside and go, okay, I'm willing to face the rejection of not being accepted, but can I lean into this for a moment and imagine all the possibilities that could open up for us if we could learn to lean into that on a more regular basis.
And it's important, I guess, to think about the possibility and what this can open up. And also, at least that's my personal experience, then there's a need to allow yourself to go through a series of unsuccessful attempts, which is something that I really, really disliked in the past, and I still dislike it intensely. And Raphael said, at every experience like that would be or maybe a kind of messy. And he mentioned when we started this streaming, in the first ones we just talked, without streaming, and we were both nervous. And it's like, oh, what are we going to talk about? How are we going to do it? Is this okay? And did we improve? Well, I believe we did a little, but more importantly, we, in this space of this streaming, we have reached a higher level of resistance towards this level of messiness, discomfort, the fact that things may not work out the way we wanted them, that there might be technical issues. It doesn't create a sense of dread that it did at the beginning. At least that's the case for me.
That's right. And I'll touch just on a couple things while we're on that topic. So for me, at least, the goal was not to achieve a certain number of viewers or to make outstanding content starting from the beginning. the goal in the beginning was to be consistent, to just show up. And that's still what the goal is. Do I want to create content that engages? Absolutely, I do. Do I hope to have a growing audience? Yes, I definitely do. But the important thing was showing up and creating content that I believe is valuable, and just sharing the conversations, Alesh, that you and I were having anyway. And so I think there's a value in that. And last week we talked about you are entitled to the action only, never its fruits. And I think, doing something like this is a perfect example of that. And the second point I wanted to make was on failure. And you mentioned failure. So going into a situation with an expectation, like I'm going to be uncomfortable because we'll go back to the example of talking to a stranger, because I hope something good will come out of it. Maybe a new relationship or a job opportunity or a friendship or whatever. There's value in the failure. There's value in the rejection. So learning to be graceful in the face of that rejection or in that so-called failure, there is always going to be value there. And statistically speaking, if you keep trying, eventually there's going to be a win, right? Like I think of the saying, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So failure is good. And I think we can do a whole episode on failure and learning to embrace that. And that's a perfect example of embracing discomfort. Can you sit with that failure? Does it mean you're a terrible person? Does that mean you don't have value as a person, or that you shouldn't continue or try again? I don't think it does.
Yeah, it's I'd like to loop in the subjective nature of the discomfort that we touched upon earlier today, because I agree with you when it comes to failure and the ability to handle it. And also, I agree with you when you said that the part of the process is going to be messy. But at the same time, for each of us, the discomfort, the next zone of growth might look differently. So, for example, messiness might not be that challenging for people who are the doers, who just turn to go into action without any preparation, who just want to go and improvise. For these people, being messy may sound okay. I'll say, okay, let's do it. Maybe if that's you, the challenge you need to take on is sitting in quiet or doing your preparation, doing your homework before you actually go into action. And the same goes with the failure. There are plenty of people who can't stomach success, and it's I realize that to some extent that's me. I'm finding reasons why whatever I did was not a success. I was brought up in a culture and in a way that expects me to decline compliments. So when someone compliments me, it's customary in my culture to say, no, but it wasn't that great, So I'm kind of embracing failure, at least verbally. So for me, the challenge that I took on some time ago was just take a compliment or positive feedback without trying to self-deprecate or come up with a comment why it wasn't actually that difficult. So even this is the way how a challenge or a stretch or a discomfort might look like.
Yeah, I love that example. I remember reading a piece of data suggesting that something about like 19 seconds for us to be able to accept a compliment. In other words, like a very brief compliment doesn't cut it. And I think that a lot of people share that same reaction. I know I do, Alesh, where it's very difficult to accept a compliment, right? Or praise, at least initially. And that can kind of disguise itself as humility. Oh, I'm too humble to accept this compliment. But I don't think that it's true humility. And I think there is actually humility in being able to accept someone's genuine compliment or genuine positive feedback. I think the takeaway from that piece of data was, if you're going to compliment someone, for one, make sure it's authentic and that you're not just blowing hot air, and take a little bit of extra time and finesse to really let them understand what you mean with this compliment. It's worth it. If it's worth mentioning, it's worth really clarifying. Why is it that you value the action that they did or the thing that they created? So take it a little step further. And I think at that point, people have an easier time accepting the compliment, because it's not hollow. You're not just throwing something out there. I think you're awesome. No, I think what you did was really great, because, and this was what I took away from it. So thank you. And please continue. And so there's a big distinction between truly giving somebody some generous feedback in that way, or a true compliment in that way, and just throwing something their way, throwing a bone their way just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm checking if I should set up a timer for 19 seconds and start complimenting you to see what it does. And maybe we can do complimenting session in one of the future sessions. I think I would like to go, since we have like 15 minutes left, I would like to go into something practical. And I'm going to kind of harvest this time a little bit to circle back to what we didn't do last time. I know we committed earlier to do this 1 month challenges. The month is over. We didn't do like any closing remarks. So I'm gonna do mine very quickly, saying, yeah, I did 30 days without YouTube. I did 30 days without processed sugar. It is something I tried in the past, so it wasn't that hard. It was really reconquering the territory. And I did since regressed a little bit again. So I allowed myself to do stuff. I still feel in control, but I did watch some YouTube videos since the end of this challenge that were not productive use of my time. I did eat some empty calories that were not worth it, quite certainly. So
How dare you?
That's something for me to do. But what I'm really looking for is, number one, hearing from you, Raphael, because I know you did also some limitations with coffee and other stuff. But number two, I think there's still enough time to commit to something new, and I'm really not clear what to take home right now, and if I even should, because there's some another training program coming for the both of us in September. But I feel the itch. I should try to do something else. So how is it for you, and what do you see in your future in this area?
Yeah, please excuse the barking dog. Somebody's just, one of my workers is leaving right now. The no processed sugar was easy for me because I already wasn't doing that for a very, very long time. So I did bring a little bit of extra awareness to my diet during that month. And I'm constantly looking to balance that and improve that. The no YouTube was perfect for me because I was going pretty deep into YouTube. So taking a month off was very eye-opening for me. And like you, once the month was over, I found myself kind of engaging with content that probably some of it could have been left behind. I tend to go heavy into tutorial stuff when I'm learning something new or when I'm getting back into something. So I was doing kettlebells very consistently for about 8 months. And then I gave up caffeine. And during those first couple of weeks, a lot of my training kind of went downhill. And I kind of doubled down and I'm now recommitted to my strength program. Kettlebells are still included, but I've gotten recently back into barbell training. So I was on a waiting list for some equipment through Rogue that I'd been for many, many months. Finally got that set up, and I'm in the process of finishing my home gym, but it's fully functional now. It's just got some aesthetic stuff to finish. And so my commitment is to continue with weightlifting twice a week. I have some goals as far as weights and numbers are concerned, but they're really secondary. They're not in the forefront for me. The commitment for me is to show up twice a week and really challenge myself. So I spent about 2 hours yesterday there. It's my own gym. It's here on my property, so I don't have to go very far. There's no excuse for why I can't make it. Now, naturally, things will come up, and I will have to make changes from time to time, but I'm committed to doing that. And so it's simple for me to gauge whether I've shown up or not. Did I show up, or did I not show up? So that's my big next commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I need to find. I think I need to start before next week. Let's do this. I need to commit to something publicly, I guess. So let's start with a week. That's what I feel I can overcome right now. Let's say I'll do some physical exercise every day. So should it be one push-up, at least that, but I'll do something every day. I know I'm capable to do more, so I think I can easily do more. But important part for me is going to be not to skip a day. I need to do something. A push-up, a squat, anything. One is a victory already with not skipping a day. I'll do that, and we'll meet next week, and then we'll see if I manage that. Then I can talk numbers again, which I didn't for quite a while.
Yeah, I would suggest to you and to anybody watching who's looking to set something similar to take a few minutes and figure out what it is you would like to do, and then set a time and say, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes at this hour on this day, and make that the non-negotiable. And how much you do can be negotiable. But if you create that, if you show up and you just say, I'm going to do something tomorrow, but I don't know what and I don't know when, you're less likely to achieve the result that you want. So I would encourage you to take a little bit of time and think about some things that work for you, and yeah, have fun with it, man.
Not sure how much fun it's going to be, but it needs to happen. Okay. I think before we come to closing this, I mentioned that we are kind of about to start another program, me and Raphael, with the coach you mentioned, Adam Quiney. And in the light of this, I wanted to ask Raphael, how do you plan for different level of workload, different level of commitment in different times of the year. I know for you, your work is seasonal, so that might affect it. Do you also look forward, like the next couple of months, to see when it is wise for you to take on more, or do you rather believe that this is a way to find excuses not to start stuff?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe you could rephrase it.
All right, I will, because it's so what's happening with me more often than I would wish is sometimes I say, oh, okay, I should start this challenge, but quite frankly, this is going to be a tough month. I'm going to have enough on my plate already because there's this and this event in my calendar already. So what if I just start a month later? At the same time, for me at least, every month something is good enough reason, not to start. So I'm kind of stuck between the rock and a hard place. On one hand, I tend to postpone things, finding excuses. On the other hand, some of these commitments are really too big to allow me to do more. So the other potential pitfall is a denial. So I guess for you, in the busiest days or weeks of the year, during the, I don't know, I guess it's a harvest season. That's my imagination of
Yes,
what it
that's
is.
it.
Planning something extra for this time of the year would probably not be wise. How do you manage this? How do you manage this tension of, finding excuses? There's something in my agenda already. I should not start now.
Yeah,
Versus
yeah.
reasonably planning or postponing something because there's a real overload possible.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think that playing a little bit of devil's advocate with yourself and making a couple of charts, in other words, what could go wrong? What would it be like to take on this, and what might happen? And so I think there are different types of commitments we can take on, and it's really important to distinguish here. So I'll give you an example. Our first mastermind we did together, the intensive, took place in October. This was during harvest season for me. And I made the commitment to do it anyway. The invitation was there for me to join the intensive again this October. And I made a very clear choice of no, I will not do that. And it was almost entirely, that choice was pretty much entirely because of the timing, because it takes place during harvest. So I tried it. I gave it a shot, and things worked out, and yet I wouldn't do it again because it would feel irresponsible for me to do it a second time under the current circumstances. Now, if we're talking about taking on a new habit that we've been wanting to, so an example would be, I want to start working out, but next month is really a busy month for me. I would play devil's advocate with myself in that situation and go and call bullshit on that and go, actually, this is going to help support you in the extra workload that you have. Doing something, and you know me, I'm really I'm very serious about self-care, and I advocate for people putting themselves first and really securing your own oxygen mask. And so for me, I make sure I have an abundance of time to do these things for myself, and regardless of whatever else is going on in my life. And I think that this is a perfect example, Alesh, of the discomfort. If you're a workaholic, if you're someone who puts your work first, that's always going to be present for you as a reason why you can't begin something. Oh, I really want to spend more time with my family, but I got this big project right now, and we also have this new client, and it's not going to happen. This month is not a good time. I know I should start working out, but I got a lot going on this month. Those excuses are always going to be there. There's always going to be a reason why it's not the best time. And some of the most high functioning, busy people in the world have discovered this for themselves, and they often prioritize their own time, their own self-care, their own exercise, meditation, cooking, whatever it is, sleep, all of those things. More hours spent on a project does not necessarily equal a better outcome or better performance, right? There's a quality. We've all heard the kind of 80-20 rule. 20% of your output creates 80% of your results. I think that's something like that is probably true in a lot of situations. So I think it's important to really look at both sides of it and ask yourself and answer the question honestly, what is it that I'm avoiding feeling here by delaying this further? And what would be possible if I just jumped and didn't worry about that and dealt with it as it came? What would be possible? I hope that answers the question.
No, it certainly does, and it wraps up nicely the topic for today, I believe. So, is there anything that you believe we should make a topic of our next week's conversation? Anything that we should commit to right now, or is that also something that we're gonna leave for later? What do you say?
Yeah, I don't have anything off the top of my head. But I'd be happy to connect with you again offline and shoot some ideas around. I think it would be helpful if we could come up with a couple of weeks in advance so people have something to look forward to. And if you happen to be watching this, we would love to hear from you. We would love to have any suggestions for topics that you might like to see discussed or any questions that you have. So please don't hesitate to share, and we will do our best to tackle that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan. And there are some new updates with the platforms for streaming coming. So we'll try to make it more interesting, even with weaving in extra information, because there's a lot of other authors we are mentioning. There are books we are mentioning every time, but we are not always providing links for you. So we're going to make it more visible, so you can go to the resources we are using and make your own mind based on the books recommended here. So
indeed,
thank you all, and have a lovely evening if you're from EU, as I am. Morning if you are from US, and whatever part of the day it is for you if you're watching this from other region or from the recording.
Till next time.
See you in a week.